Hey guys, welcome to day 5 desserts. Dough can be nuts. When we're thinking of this particular name for this recipe, it just felt so good because it just talks about what you can do with your dough, which is to make donuts. Now, this is going to be the fluffiest donut you will ever make and the best ever. Once again, here is an overview of all the ingredients that were duly shopped by Price Pally. So you want to make sure you reach out to them. As you get the voucher code, please use it, right? Now, guys, here is our all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour, that equally works. I'll be using eggs in this recipe, full cream milk. I'm going to be adding some salt. I'm adding some saffron because it adds a very lovely flavor. I'm adding some yeast. I'm using sugar. I'm also going to be using butter, right? And here is cold water. You want to make sure it is very cold water out of your fridge, right? Now, first thing we're going to mix is our sugar, our saffron into our mixer. By the way, for everything we use a stand mixer for, you can use a hand mixer or you can also use your hand. I'm also going to add my flour in. All the measurements have already been provided, and then I'm adding my yeast. Basically, I'm adding all the dry ingredients together. Here is my powdered milk going in and also that salt, and then I'm going to mix all the dry ingredients together using my stand mixer. If you're using hand, you just want to use your manual whisk to just whisk everything together and mix it until it is properly incorporated, right? You don't want milk on one side. At some point using a stand mixer, it is okay to pause and make sure the flour comes together using a spoon. Now I'm adding a mixture of that cold water and 3 eggs, right? Once again, all the measurements have been provided, so make sure you stick to it and then you get the best results, right? Now we're going to mix this using the stand mixer. If you're using your hand, it means you're going to ditch that whisk, right, and use your hand at this point. You want to first of all mix it, and then you can now spread it on your flat board and then begin to knead that dough. However, with a stand mixer, I get to do this without stress. Okay, now I'm adding my butter. It is not fully melted. You can see it still holds its shape, right? You want it to still be a little bit cold. Now for donuts, the reason why we use cold water and also we use cold butter, but not so cold, it's not as cold as the one you use for meat pie, is because we want to work that dough for a long time. Usually the kneading process takes like 20 to 30 minutes, right? So you want to knead that dough until you get this window pane. Now, what is a window pane test? Stretching that dough until it is transparent and you can almost see through it and it won't break, right? You can see the core of that. It wasn't breaking. This is how to test that you have properly kneaded your dough. If you're not able to do the window pane test, continue kneading your dough. And again, I was explaining why we use cold water. We use cold water so that that dough doesn't start rising before we are done. If you use warm water, it already begins to activate your yeast and then that begins to rise, right? So that's why we use cold water. Now I have my baking sheet here, or parchment paper as you may call it. I'm folding that into about 4 layers and then I'm going to be cutting it into squares. That's because I'll be placing the donuts on it so it's easy to fry and you can easily take your dough off that parchment paper. You know it comes like non-stick, right? So it's best, instead of just placing it on a board or on your table, it may stick and then change the form or the shape of your donuts. You still want it to look perfect and beautiful, so this is one of the best ways to do that. So you have me lining it up after I've cut it into about 4 pieces, right? So what you want to also do is, if you're doing this commercially, now this is just for the holidays, right? So it's not like you're doing this to sell, even though this recipe you can actually start a donut business with it. However, I'm focusing on the fact that you're doing this for your family, for yourself. So what you want to do is just to cut out a part of the dough and then mold it. Now, if you were to do this commercially, you want to get a scale and measure the dough so that they are of equal sizes, right? So if you're going with 100 grams, right, you want to make sure the dough is 100 grams. That way you get uniform sizes. However, I'm doing this at home, right, for my family to enjoy for the holidays. So I'm not going to be doing all that uniform measurements. I'm just going to cut out the one that I want. And the holidays for me is something big, something huge. So I'm going to be making really large donuts, as you may have seen at the beginning, right? Now note the size and note how I molded that dough. Now I'm going to show you again so you can see how the dough was molded. You cut out a piece, right? You begin to tuck it in at the middle and then you begin to move your hands together to make sure the bottom is well rounded, as you can see me do here. You may need to watch this over and over to get it well. Then I turn the bottom of that dough and try to pinch it so that you don't see where the dough comes together, and then I slam it on the table again to make sure that that dough is properly molded. Rub it in flour so it doesn't stick to my parchment paper, and this is what it should look like. Once again, I'm pitching that bottom up so that it doesn't look like where the dough came together, and then you slam that same side on your table. Make sure you flat your surface so that it doesn't stick to your table. I'm going to sprinkle some flour over that just so once again it doesn't stick to your parchment paper, and this is what your donut should look like. Now, to make the donut with holes, I'm going to again do this by hand. If you're doing this professionally or you want to decide to do this professionally, you know you have to use either a cutter or the cover of a bottle to put in a hole at the middle. However, I'm doing this the way my mom taught me. Now, growing up, at some point we used to sell donuts. We used to sell donuts, so at some point growing up, and this was how we used to put the hole in donuts as time went by when we became professionals, right? So for you, you may not be able to do that, but me, this is like years and years of experience. I'm talking way back when I was in secondary school. That was how far back. So donuts is not new to me at all. However, if you want to put your hole in your donuts, all you need to do is to take a bottle water empty, right? You mean that regular empty bottle, right? You can just put that in flour, the mouth in flour, and then put it at the middle of your dough. Press it in, take it out. It's going to create that hole at the middle, and you can just use your hand to pick out the little dough that has cut out, right? Or you can simply just get out a board and a roller pin, flatten your dough, take a round cutter to begin to cut out the round sizes if you're not able to use your hand to mold it into a ball, right? However, if you can mold it into a ball using your hand, that works. If you can't, once again, roll it flat on your board, but make sure it's not too flat, and then use a round cutter to cut out the round shapes. Okay, now I left this dough to rise covered in a warm place. I had to make sure my kitchen was warm at this point and covered it with a bag, and then after about 30 minutes, this was how it had doubled in size and we were good to fry. Now let's talk about the oil. Make sure your oil is not too hot. In fact, you will notice that after each frying, I turn off that heat so that it can cool down the temperature and it doesn't become too hot. The problem with when the oil is too hot is that as soon as you place your donut in, it's going to turn brown almost immediately, and that's a bad sign. It means that your donut will not be fully cooked. You would see where it's looking so beautiful on the outside. You open it up and it is raw. Nobody likes raw donuts, right? Notice how there is barely bubble in that pan, but it's still frying, right? It's still hot. You don't want it to soak up some oil, but at the same time, you don't want it to be too hot. When I flipped it over, you could see that the flour made it bubble up. Now, at this point, I would actually turn off my heat because the bubbles I'm seeing is too much. And if you continue this way, it will get brown in less than 1 minute and your dough would not be cooked. It will just look beautiful on the outside, right? So you want to fry your dough on each side for at least 4 to 5 minutes. Now, when it's on low heat, it's going to work perfectly. The only reason you can't fry it for 5 minutes is if your oil is too hot. So that should be enough to tell you that, okay, we need to turn down this heat. Now just look at that flip, look at the color. This looks gorgeous, this looks beautiful. It is just so good. And that's it, guys. You've just made the perfect, most delicious, milky donuts, because most commercial donuts don't come with milk, right? I added milk in mine because I wanted mine to be extra milky and delicious, and also added the saffron to add extra flavor. Now if you don't have saffron, you can decide to use another flavorful herb like rosemary. You want something to just make it stand out and not just your regular donut. However, if you don't have any of those fresh herbs, you can decide to just fry it by itself. It still works. Please use milk. is going to add that lovely milkiness to your donuts. Now here is me frying the one with holes. Notice how we doubled in size. And for a lot of you that love aesthetics, look at the white lines. It just shows that your dough has properly risen, and this is another type of donuts. There are different types of donuts. However, this one looks so good and so delicious. I can't wait to show you what the inside looks like, because guys, this is really good. Once again, always turn up the heat before you fry the next batch. And if you put it in and it's getting brown too quickly, take it off the heat completely and allow that fry for a bit off the heat before you bring it back. Now that was the last batch I was doing. At this point, guys, this looks like it's not real because the colors, it just looks so divine. I can't wait for you guys to try it out. Notice I already turned off the heat while I was even taking it out. That's how you want to make sure you watch that heat. It is really important, and that's why I'm emphasizing. Now at this point, you can decide to fill your donuts with strawberry jam. We can decide to fill it with whatever filling you like. I decided to dust mine with sugar because that milk was already perfect for me, and every bite is just going to be fluffy and milky, and this is what it should look like. And guys, this is what we have. Now let me show you what the inside looks like. If it's fluffy, if it's well cooked, right? And then I'm just going to open that up. Is anybody doing any drum roll? Okay, now look at that. This is what you want to get, that fluffy look inside. It almost looks like bread, but this is just so good. See you in my next video.